Hello, you are listening to From Maclay to Zama. I'm your host, Karen Miller. This podcast is about the adventures of two women from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, who worked for the U.S. Army at Camp Zama, Japan, from 1953 to 1955. Their stories are told through hundreds of letters written home. Welcome to episode 42, letters 134 to 136, Climbing Mount Fuji. I don't know if you realized it, but Maclay Street was in the news recently. In the early morning hours of Sunday, April 13th, there was an arson fire at the Pennsylvania governor's mansion. The governor and his family were home asleep. Luckily, no one was hurt. The mansion is located on Front Street in Harrisburg, taking up the block between Maclay Street and Geiger Street. I'm glad that Bern and Peg missed this cowardly act of hatred toward an elected official and his family, so close to their beloved home. Well, Peg is finally going to climb Mount Fuji. I can't wait. I randomly opened the Fuji letter and discovered the lava rock that Peg had enclosed in it years ago before I started this project. I made a necklace out of it that I often wear and cherish. You can see a photo of it on the podcast website, www.FromMaclayToZama.com. It makes me happy. I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I did making it. Letter 134 from Bern, written August 3rd, 1954. Good morning, dear ones. 'Tis beautiful weather we are having, although still too many showers. Hot sun, but cool breezes, and such lovely blue skies and white cloud formations. The early evening skies right after the sun has gone down are especially interesting, and I like to view them from my room against the backdrop of the mountains and the immediate green of my special pine tree. Thus far, at least, the muggy, humid uncomfortableness of last summer has not repeated itself. For all small favors we are grateful. Saturday we returned to Kamakura to take pictures of the Big Buddha. This was about the first sightseeing trip we made when we arrived in Japan last summer. But at the time we had no camera with us, and since this is a very unusual and unique monument, we felt that we really should record it on film. None of us was too much interested in going, but we felt we should do it, and since nothing better occurred, we went. As so often happens in such instances, it turned out to be a very interesting day, and we had lots of fun. First of all, when we got off the train and wondered about transportation out to the park, where the Buddha is located, we were approached by two rickshaw drivers. That was all the encouragement we needed, because we have never ridden in them, and have always wanted to since we first arrived. So just imagine some foreign-type film when you have seen the dowager or maybe even the heroine riding imperiously around in this type of vehicle. Unfortunately, we were on the go so much, I didn't get a picture of Peg and Gladys, and she snapped one of me while we were in motion, so this historic event may not be recorded for posterity. We'll have to wait for another occasion. After walking around a short time, snapping pictures like mad, we decided we had had enough, and still it was very early in the afternoon, and we had made no further plans for the day. As we strolled out of the park, we saw the Japanese hotel Dai Butsu, which has been highly recommended to me one time as being very interesting and picturesque. We decided to go in and see for ourselves, and lo and behold, it was so interesting. We stayed there from 3 o'clock in the afternoon until almost 9:30 that night. The cocktail lounge, which we only peeked into, had a glass-topped fish tank which served as the bar, so that the folks could sit there and look down and see the fish swimming around the lighted tank. That held absolutely no appeal for me. If I'm going to see anything under those circumstances, I want it to be pink elephants. But also in this room was a moss-covered tree growing right in the center, with, of course, a hole in the roof for its expansion, and a wooden circular seat built around it. The main dining room, where we stayed for those many hours, opened into a lovely garden. The entire one wall of the room was exposed, and we were the only ones there at first, so we picked a choice table right near the outside. A 4 or 5-piece band played Hawaiian music, and that was the main attraction. They were very good, and the young singer was a combination of Dean Martin, Tony Martin, and Perry Como. As the day progressed, many more American service people wandered in, and we ended by having a fine stateside party, dancing with some sailors, and especially enjoying one kid who could tell jokes with any kind of accent required. It was a most enjoyable day. Tacos and fun was had by all, and we completed it by eating a practically midnight supper at our favorite spot in Yokohama, Original Joe's. 3 gals arrived back in camp around 12:30 or 1 in the morning, very tired but happy. Sunday afternoon, we drove around in Kathy Ho's beat-up convertible looking for a beautiful lake, which was described as being in the near vicinity. We had bathing suits on under our pedal pushers, cushions, beach chairs, magazines, and eats piled in the trunk. And after about 2 hours search, we still had not found the lake. All that equipment simply could not be wasted, so we wound up at another Army establishment and used their very beautiful swimming pool and beach chairs and tables. We enjoyed it so much, in between real hard showers, that we were planning a wiener roast in the same location either Wednesday or Thursday of this week. The one and only outdoor fireplace I have seen in this country is over there, so we are going to take full advantage of it. It is now 2:45, and I've been typing this on and off between jobs since 8 a.m. So I'm going to hurry up and finish so it can go out in the afternoon mail. This money order is for your own use, as will the next 2 be, which I will send the next 2 paydays. I told you before I left, I thought you should have the excess of approximately $150 from Aunt May's funds, and it is high time I do something about getting it to you. $49 is the highest amount I can send in one money order without getting written permission from an officer. So I'll send it in 3 installments. I don't care if you divide it between you for your own purposes or pull it and get something you want for the house, but do use it. Please don't just bank it where it will be used in small, insignificant dribbles and not accomplish anything big. Are you still the official banker and post officer goer, Daddy? Or should I make the next one out to Helen so she can cash it? Let me know, although I probably won't receive your answer to this particular letter until after I've sent one more at least. I see the mail clerk walking back the hall toward the collection box. I must fly. Tacos and love, Bern. Letter 135 from Bern, written the 8th of August, 1954. Hi, folks. Let me warn you, this letter will be filled with typing errors. I've borrowed Mary Carrera's portable Remington, which is seldom used and consequently very stiff and unmanageable. Also, the fact that it is a portable is strike 1 against it. So continue at your own risk. Peg and Gladys should at this moment be well on their way back down the mountain if plans proceeded as scheduled. I've been thinking about them ever since I woke this morning because it is awfully hot here right now at camp, and all that energy needed for a climb or descent can't contribute much to cooling them. However, I made Peg take plenty of Noxzema, and Gladys has a bottle of suntan lotion, and they have their wide-brimmed coolie straw hats, which should afford them a great deal of shade. Also, everyone tells me it's much cooler up there on the mountain itself than down here. However, since you two aren't here to worry about her, I'm doing your share of it. There are just 2 things I felt like talking to you about today. One is Mrs. Elizabeth Gray Vining's book, Windows for the Crown Prince, which I'm in the process of reading right now. You remember, I'm sure, that she is the Philadelphia Quaker lady who was chosen to tutor Japan's young prince back in 47, 48, and 49. Her book is very well written and means so much more to me now that I'm over here than it could ever have meant before. She, of course, was treated royally by all the inner circles, both Japanese and American, and her book brings out the many explanations or answers to many questions I've had about places, events, and people. She can describe so much better than I ever could some of the things about Japan which I love. You won't be bored if I quote for a while, will you? I'm real enthused about this book just now. About Japanese gardens, she said, the delicacy, precision of detail, the emphasis on suggestion rather than statement, the provision of balance rather than symmetry, the love of things in themselves, the texture of wood, the solidity of rock. Then her word pictures about things I have seen and enjoyed. The tiny candle-lighted boats slipping down the river with the souls of the dead after their annual visit to the land of the living. Fishermen on the piney shores. The clip-clop sound of the wooden gaita. The vendor of wind bells. Peg has bought me 2 of these bells for my collection. The salty taste of crisps o senbai, rice cakes. An interesting contrast is her explanation of democracy given to the young princess from William Penn's words. That country is free where the laws rule and the people are party to the laws. And then later in the book, she tells of overhearing one of the early occupation personnel say that in a house in which he had spent a day or two, the wife had asked him, "What is democracy?" And he replied, "Democracy means you have as much right to sleep with a stranger as your husband has." In varying degrees, the Japanese are still being presented with these widely different concepts of Americans and American life. They must be mighty confused and bewildered by the whole program. But best of all are the quotable items in this book thus far is this very graphic and so true description of the crowded conditions of Japanese trains. This was written by a Japanese student during an English class, but it couldn't be better said by anyone. My foot are stepped on. My hands are caught. I feel like a canned sardine. Our favorite chaplain suffered a heart attack during the past week, but is recovering nicely, thank God. Chaplain Leverance, the Missouri Lutheran pastor on the post, conducted the regular 11 o'clock worship this morning and had a fine sermon too. He lacks the personal radiance of spirit, which is part of our chaplain's power and charm. You might be interested in hearing about his description of types of Christians. He says there are rocking chair Christians, ones who are merely resting on the promises of salvation. There are ticket to heaven Christians. Church membership is their guarantee that they will get there. There are pay-as-you-go Christians. A generous contribution from time to time will do the trick. Golden rule Christians. A very fine idea as far as it goes, but is it enough? Pharisee-type Christians. Don't for a minute let anyone be in doubt about your goodness. Shout your good deeds from the housetop. The fact that you tithe, pray, read the Bible, etc. Don't you agree that he threw out some interesting ideas to think about? Well, folks, that brings you just about up to date on what I'm thinking and talking about these days. And that's what you want to know, isn't it? Right now, I must change clothes and walk up to the service club to see a traditional Japanese tea ceremony. Sounds interesting. I'll tell you about it in the next letter. Do take care of yourselves because I kind of like you both. Love, Bernson. We're going to take a break now for a minute to promote the new podcast, Deep Below, coming in the fall of 2025. So when is a person dead? The Victorians believed it was when breathing stops, or when the soul departs, when no one remembers the person, or when their name is no longer uttered. Coming in the fall of 2025, explore my father's side of the family. It also happens to be President William McKinley's. Join me, Lavinia, Katie, Elsie, Hazel, Blaine, and David for Deep Below, a new podcast by Cussewago Productions, available wherever you get your podcasts and at www.deepbelowpodcast.com. Well, this is it, the big letter. Letter 136 from Peg, written the 9th of August, 1954, enclosed in a piece of cloth was a lava rock. Dear Mother and Daddy, well, where to start? This will be the letter to tell you about climbing Mount Fuji, and I hardly know where to begin, so I'll just jump in. I'm not working today for obvious reasons. By obvious, I mean the 3-inch strip of wind burn around each ankle, which, so help me, is the only place I hurt. Gladys and I were so excited about the trip that that's all we talked about last week. We borrowed knapsacks, shoes, canteens, etc. from friends and could hardly wait till Friday night to pack them. We packed separately and then had to unpack and repack together again to compare items. Then we went to bed early to get a good night's sleep. I only had to get up once to battle mosquitoes, which is most unusual. So come Saturday morning, Kathy took Bern, Gladys, she and I over to YED for breakfast because the electricity was off at Zama and we wanted a hearty meal before starting. At long last, it was time to load up and get started. We had pictures taken of us by Bern. Then Tabby and her boyfriend drove up to the billet and we had to pose for pictures for her, along with getting razzed and laughed at by everyone who saw us because we looked like something out of this world. Paul, Tabby's boyfriend, drove us up to the service club where we got on a bus along with about 30 other fools. The bus left at 1300 and took us to the 3rd station and for another bus to take us to the 5th station. But we energetic folks couldn't wait, so at last we were on our way. I'll say right here and now that the only thing that kept us going on was our sense of humor. Gladys and I stuck together, and we could always find something to laugh about. The first laugh came when we had climbed about 10 minutes. The trail then was like any mountain trail, firm ground, trees, shrubs, etc. I don't know whose typewriter this is, but I saw it in Bern's room, and I'm borrowing it. Maybe she bought it. I haven't had time to catch up on all the news with her yet, but I'll take good care of it no matter whose it is. To get back to the story, as I said, we climbed about 10 minutes, and we got so out of breath that we had to stop and rest and eat some candy, crackers, have some water, cookies, etc., thinking that this was probably the worst part of the climb. Ha! Little did we know. So then we felt pretty good and started out again. It seemed as though we would never get to the next station, but we finally got to the 5th one. What happened to the 4th one? I don't know, but there just ain't no such station. We had our Fuji sticks branded there, rested for a little while, and then started out again. The entire trail up the mountain was just jam-packed with thousands of Japanese people making the trip, and it was most difficult to keep your footing because it was also dark, and they always, in any crowd, just push and shove so that they can get there first. And believe me, going uphill on a mountain trail is one time that we wish they'd be more polite, but never happened. About that time, the ground started to get volcanic ash, a sample of which is enclosed. Please treasure it always. To me, it is priceless. We saw 2 guides with horses coming down the trail, and we decided to go horseback as far as we could, thus saving our tired bones that much. Me, who's never been on a horse in my life, I have to have my initiation as an equestrian on an old nag who was just as tired as I was, going up a volcanic ash trail. Didn't know whether I was sitting right or not, didn't know whether the stirrups fit right or not, pitch dark, with thousands of people trying to beat me and the horse up the trail. You can just imagine that I hung on for dear life and thanked the Lord that I didn't get that bright idea coming down the trail, because I would have rolled off over his head for sure. Anyhow, Trigger and I made it to the 7th station, with the guide leading us. The 7th is as far as any living things besides people can go, except we saw one man with his dog going up. Why the man ever wanted to take his dog with him is a mystery to me. I'm sure the dog wasn't the least bit interested in what the world looked like from the top of Mount Fuji. And if it had been up to him, he would have had more sense than people. It was about midnight by that time. While we were climbing, we were very warm and sweaty, but as soon as we got stopped to rest, we got freezing cold. We rested about every 10 steps and took long breaks at every rest station. You just can't imagine what it was like to see the mountain, the side of the mountain at night. All up and down the trail, you could see flashlights beaming. There were a lot of groups of hikers. The leader carried a banner, and then they would call out to each other until we felt like telling them just to shut up, because they hollered up all over that mountain. The moon was half full, and it was a beautiful night. Incidentally, we didn't have a bit of rain the whole trip, which is most unusual, because it usually rains somewhere on the mountain during the day. We were fortunate indeed. We finally made it to the 8th station. They tell you there are 10 stations on the mountain, but from the 7th to the 10th, every station has about 6 substations, so you think you'll never make it to the next one. At every station, we would pant, "Is this station number 8, Boy-san?" He'd say, "No, this is 7.5. Gad." Please try to picture where we were going through by that time. Volcanic ash underfoot, so that sometimes we'd slide back more than we gained. We couldn't see more than a few steps ahead of us, and the trail was practically straight up. We had to climb over rocks, sometimes on our hands and knees, and all the time they were pushing and shoving to get there first. When they'd push too much, we'd stop and let a crowd of them get past us and then start in again. By the time we got to the 8th station, we thought we'd better have something hot to drink. It sounds like a simple matter, indeed, to get a hot water and put a tea bag and sugar in it, doesn't it? Well, we were so tired that we smoked 2 cigarettes apiece and shivered for about 10 minutes before we had the strength to open our packs and get out the tea. Then we got the hot water, for which he charged us 20 yen a cup, the robber. We went on to the second 8th station and I told Gladys that I just couldn't go any farther, that I would wait for her there until she came back the next day. So then we decided to sleep for a while. I wish I had a flash attachment for my camera with me, because you'd never believe what it was like to sleep at one of the rest stations. There's a big room, and in the room, every inch of space is taken up by a body wrapped in a futon. There isn't even enough room to walk between them. Of course, the smell is horrible. We were lucky, though, because Papa-san put us in a smaller room off to the side of the big room, and there were only about 6 bodies in there with us. I don't know what or who they were, because they were covered up head to foot. We conked out and slept pretty good. That was about 3:30 a.m., and we got up at 6 a.m. after sunrise, which we hated to miss, but we were just too tired to get up sooner. When we got up, there our friends were sitting at the foot of our futons having breakfast of rice and of some other glutch, and singing songs, etc. They were Japanese boys, and they acted like they had certainly hit the sake bottle the night before. Oh, what an experience. I wouldn't have traded this trip for $1 million. Of course, we slept with all our clothes on except for our jackets and shoes, so we sure felt crusty when we got awake. There's absolutely no place to wash your face and hands because all the water on the mountain has to be carried up from the bottom, I think. There's no mountain streams or anything like that. So we loaded up again and started out. It was a gorgeous day, but it was cold. By that time, we were up beyond the clouds, but the clouds were scattered and the view was just gorgeous. I took Taku-san pictures, and I sure hope they turn out good. We looked up the mountain and saw a flag at what we thought was the top. Aha! Someone told us it was the top, and I knew I had it made. I could get there with no sweat at all. We climbed up to the next 8th station, losing more and more determination to get there with every step I took, and we decided it was time for breakfast. We flopped down amongst tin cans, broken bottles, and a couple hundred Japanese right outside a benjo, and we ate Vienna sausages, orange juice, crackers, and a candy bar. Gee, what we could have done with ham and eggs right then. This was the place where we saw the flag from below, and we thought it was the top. Ha! We looked up farther, and we had as far to climb as from the time we got off the horse. I kept saying, Gladys, I just can't do it. I just can't do it. She said, if other people can do it, so can you. So get with it and come on. She told me today that she felt the same way, but she couldn't agree with me out loud, or we would never have made it. Then we came across some fellows who were resting. The trail was so steep that no one made good time, just walked about 2 feet and then rested 10 minutes. So we climbed the rest of the way with them, and they kept up our morale besides giving us a helping hand when we needed it. So after what seemed like days, we actually walked under the Zori at the top of the mountain, and we made it. I've never felt more proud in my life. At the top, there are a lot of concession stands that sell banners and souvenirs, fruit and soft drinks, etc. And we stayed up there quite a while. We looked at the crater, which is truly stupendous. It's about 1,000 feet deep, and there was actually snow on one side of the crater. You just have no conception of it, I'm sure, but we were all duly impressed. We took pictures of everything and horsed around a lot because we were all so proud we made it. You think you'll never, ever get there, and it's such a wonderful feeling to be there. Then we came down the same way to one of the 8 stations where Gladys and I had left our knapsacks. Right beside the trail is a lava slide. It's the easiest way to go down rather than coming down the regular trail, which is just as bad as going down as it is going up. After we got our knapsacks, the fellas carry them, we cut over to the lava slide. We each had a man on both sides of us, and Gladys and her two started off first. The lava slide is straight down, no zigzagging back and forth like it was coming up. And in order to go down the slide and not roll, you take a step, dig in your heels, and then you slide through the ashes for about 5 or 6 feet. It took Gladys and her two guys 1.5 hours to come down to the 6th station. It took me and my two a little longer because we stopped to rest twice. I had enough dirt in my shoes to plant a garden because the stuff comes up around your ankles when you slide, but it was fun. Then we walked down to the 5th station, waited for a bus to the 3rd, waited again for another, but to the railroad station, and started home. We missed that bus that took us up there because it left the 3rd station at 1600, and Gladys and I didn't get down in time, so that's why we had to come home on the train. Naturally, the train was crowded, and we had to stand almost the whole way. It was hot, and we were just so dirty, and I've never felt so dirty in my life. I'm not exaggerating. We finally got home about 1 in the morning. We got Bern awake, and she was such a jewel because she made us toast and fruit, and then, of course, we had to give her the highlights of the trip. We had to wash our hair and scrub the dirt off of us. Isn't hot water and soap the best luxury in the world? I got to bed at 2 a.m. this morning, and so that's why I didn't go to work today. Physically, I feel good. The sun and wind burn around my ankles doesn't hurt anymore, and I've had some food today so that I don't feel nearly as bad as I expected I would. But this is the amazing thing. We both had to piddle before we started climbing, and we walked off a bit in the woods to take care of that matter. The only other time we repeated the performance was after we ate breakfast at one of the 8 stations. Isn't that something? I guess it's because we perspired so much. Besides the fact that unless we used one of the benjos at the station, which are simply nauseating, there's no place to go unless you want to pee right in front of every other person on the mountain. So we only went those 2 times the whole trip until we got home. As everyone says, I wouldn't have missed it for $1 million, but I wouldn't do it again for $1 million either. The scenery was spectacular, and it was a wonderful feeling to know that you actually climbed it. I'm so proud of my Fuji stick. I have stamps branded on it from every main station, plus a flag of Japan on it, and 2 banners saying that I climbed all 12,395 feet of it. I'm going to hang it on my wall in my room. It's one of my most prized possessions. This is one of the things that I can hardly wait to tell you about in person. Bern just laughed herself sick over it, and when some of the girls came back to the billet at lunch today, they came in and just hollered and laughed at Gladys and I, telling them about it. I imagine we'll have a good time at supper club tonight, because we told everyone. As I said before, it's only our sense of humor that saw us through, but Happy is just like her nickname, and we'll laugh for a long time reminiscing about it. I must soon get dressed for supper, but I'll write a little bit more and finish tonight. It's very hot right now. I got your letter today telling us that it's hot there too. It isn't much fun, is it? Mother, your telling about listening to the ball games just put me in stitches. You're a buster. I'm glad the Emmys seem so much happier in their own place again. I told you we were going to have a weenie roast last Wednesday, didn't I? Well, we went over to the YED right after work and took a dip in the pool to cool off. Then we started a fire and roasted our hot dogs and just enjoyed it so much. We took another dip about 8:15, and since we don't have daylight saving time over here, it was dark by then. The water was so nice and warm, and we wanted to stay much longer, but the pool closed at 9. If you ever saw anyone homesick for home living, you should have seen the 4 of us setting up that picnic table. One end of the table was the kitchen, the other was the dining room. The chair that we had our towels on was the bathroom, and the fireplace itself was the living room, just like a bunch of kids playing house. Well, I guess that about does it for this time. Bern took off this afternoon and went to the YED to go swimming. Kathy is going to pick up Gladys and I to take us up to the club in her car for supper. But we could very easily walk it. We both feel pretty good. In fact, I feel great. As soon as I get the pictures back, that I took on Fuji, I'll send them to you, along with lots of others that we've taken lately. Do they actually give you some idea of this place and what we're doing? Won't it be fun for us to tell you about them in person? That's all for now. I'm sorry to hear about the sick folks, and I want you to take good care of yourselves. Tell everyone I said hello. Lots of love, the mountain goat, or maybe jackass. I did see the climbing stick once. It was kept on the right side of Peg's closet. Of course, I didn't really know what I was looking at then. I didn't really know what it was or the history of it. I thought it looked like a Native American stick of some sort. I know it was one of her most prized possessions. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you're enjoying the podcast, and if you are, please subscribe in Spotify. On Apple Podcasts, hit the plus button in the top right-hand corner and rate. This will help my listeners find my podcast more easily. You can access the show's website at www.FromMcClayToZama.com, where I posted photos and links from the episodes. The podcast is now available on iHeartRadio, Pandora, Patreon, and Amazon as well. New episodes will be available each Friday morning. The letters were written by my aunts Bern and Peg, transcribed by me. I write and record the show and have created the artwork and original music. Our producer is Zeke, our sound engineer is intern Sylvie, and the security is provided by intern Frey. Thanks to my great-grandparents, John and Helen, who loved us all and thought it was a good idea to save the letters. All rights reserved, 2024.